I am going to respond to your post, Sheridan, about gender. I wonder if I can pull it up while videoing. Yes, I can. Yeah, I thought what you said was really interesting. And the quote that you pulled from 302 about gender and the effective perspective. One sees the husband as commonly abandoning their wives at the onset, whereas women usually stay and care for their men. And I think there was another part, couldn't find the quote, where it said something along the lines of, it actually was, this disease was actually a way of sort of securing a relationship and securing a woman for the men, and did the opposite for the women, where it meant they were abandoned. Which I thought was really interesting, that it wasn't just that they are more commonly, but that I think Biehl was also arguing that it actually sort of incentivized, that it was actually a motivation. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. And yeah, sort of why is that? And that seems to, I don't think he explicitly says this, but play into gender roles and the social roles that genders play all over the world, but in Brazil as well, with taking care of kids, but also their partners, right? Women being the caretakers, and men sort of being breadwinners. But something that didn't make sense to me in this is the brothers at a certain point talk about when they got the disease and they sort of like had the diagnosis, then they were like, okay, I can retire early. So they were not able to, I know, okay, okay, that makes sense. So, because with the men, they're like, okay, I can retire early now because I have this disease, because I can apply for disability, which will then get the money and support that I would be getting otherwise. So that's sort of how, that makes sense now, how the men were able to work out this disease in a way that still meant they were fitting their social role. Whereas the women, whereas Katerina wouldn't be fitting her social role in that way, wasn't able to fit the social role of taking care of the kids and Nielsen at the same time. But one could argue then she could apply for disability and she could get that money and just switch the roles, and Nielsen could just take care of the kids. But that social roles and gender roles and even more progressive places where people sort of, I think, value that and say, oh yeah, gender role switching is good, still don't do it. It's still hard. So that's very interesting. I hope that was coherent, because it was a great thought in my mind. Yeah, basically just that these two roles being locked in that way, and yeah, not switching, and how disability comes into that, and breadwinning. Interesting. Right, and I think all sort of rooting back to this idea of productivity that you mentioned, Sheridan, and yeah, and sort of in my modernity to post-modernity class, we talked a lot about that, sort of people's values being rooted in productivity with industrialization. And the more and more that came to be, the industrialization came to be, the more we value people in that way. Cool. So it's something also related to gender and all that made me think of towards the end of in the middle of the biology and ethics section, the gene expression and social abandonment. The very end of that little chapter on page 290 is the discussion of Nielsen and I don't know how to say her name, but Katerina's sister. And that part just, I don't know how much analysis I have of it, but that part just stuck out to me so strongly. This whole time we hear, okay, well, Nielsen was unfaithful to Katerina, but after they had he had decided, okay, this isn't going to work, and, they sort of split up, but we were still technically together, but she was in the hospital, and, But then you find out that he slept with her sister before any of that. And that just really fucked up to me. But yeah, she says in 290, Biehl asks, as we were again engaged in reconstructing the chronology of her exclusion, I asked her when the problems with her ex-husband began. He broke glasses on the table and betrayed me by having sex with my sister. At the time, before Anna's birth, Katerina alleged he already had another woman. So I banished him. I told him to go with his woman, with Rosa. Yep. Nilsson was a free man, and I wondered how much this incident represented the revenge he had mentioned to me earlier. Terezinha came to visit. I was ill at that time, and she told me it happened. As Katerina told this part of the story, she gasped. Terezinha, I walked through the field, the avenue, I left home, and went to get milk for Anderson and Alessandra. Did you confront Nilsson? Her response had been a wish to cut into his flesh. He broke the table, and I got a skewer. I wanted to skewer him like one does with meat. He got a skewer himself and also wanted to cut me. It was an ugly fight. I was pregnant with Anna. And then he got the revolver and aimed it at me, but he didn't shoot. I asked Katerina directly whether she thought Nilsson had known that she would become disabled like her mother. Her response was confused, oscillating between a knowledge of the plot and a fantasy of a hospital cure. If he did, he had conditions to give me shelter and comfort, but he didn't want to give it to me, so I left and wandered. He disgusts me. And why did he hospitalize you? To cure me. Of what? I had problems, and the nurses gave me injections, long needles. I don't know which problem I had, I don't recall. Maybe you had none, I said. No, I had. I recall the many women there. They laughed so loud. And I just think that all is so interesting. Sort of her internal is sort of what I think he is sort of getting at there with her, and I think to us as well is maybe there was, and I think he's hinted at this before, maybe there was nothing wrong with her other than there was nothing mentally wrong with her, that there was just this disease, the MJD, and he. That it was not that there was something wrong with her mentally, and I think what he's suggesting through this piece right before he asks her those questions is it wasn't what was wrong with her, it was Nilsson couldn't handle it, and earlier I think he talks about like him not even being able to handle, her sort of mentally, but it sounds like not even that, or like not even him not being able to handle her breaking out of social roles. But this kind of seems like he can't handle, like, the fact that he slept with her sister. Kind of seems like what he's suggesting in here, and that, like, he was being unfaithful, he was betraying her, and then when she got mad about it, and I guess probably acted out of social roles there by trying to fight him, then he is like, okay, you're crazy, you have to go to this other place because you're, if you're trying to skewer me, then, I mean, he didn't say that there, but I wonder if, sort of by the way that was laid out, that story happens. And then there's the discussion of, well, why did he hospitalize you? And I just think it's so interesting that just that part right there, why did he hospitalize you? To cure me of what? I had problems. I don't know which problems I had. I don't recall. Maybe you had none. No, I had. She doesn't even say what she had. But yeah. So, yeah, I feel like Biehl is suggesting that correlation there, that it was Nilsson, not. And earlier, I feel like in class we were talking about sort of an innocence around Nilsson, and that like he was trying to do what was best for her, like, okay, I don't know how to handle my wife who is going crazy, and but he also says in there, there's earlier part where he says that was where it turned from madness to evil. But he doesn't include in his description of it any of his own agency and any of his own mistakes, and anything that might have caused her pain. It's sort of as if like he could do anything to her, and any time that she doesn't respond, anytime she fights back or is upset about it, or even she doesn't fight back, but she just responds in some sort of way, like she has less motivation to take care of the kids, or she is depressed, or any of these things, then she's crazy, because she's not perfect, because she's dealing with the fact that her husband cheated on her. Anyway, that was really rambly, but I hope you found the good thoughts that I think were in there.